Good morning. I would like to begin by welcoming members and officers and those members of the public and press who are watching the live stream of this meeting via the Council's website. To enable the meeting to run in an orderly manner, I would ask all members of the board who have video cameras to keep their video cameras switched on for the duration of the meeting and to keep their microphone muted except when I invite them to speak. Officers will join us to introduce their reports in the usual way. Any members wishing to ask questions or to make a comment should indicate this by clicking the raised hand function in the right hand side of their screen or wherever it happens to be. When I invite you to speak, please unmute your microphone, ask your question, and then mute it again to allow the officer to respond. I would ask for your patience if we run into technical problems. And should this occur, I will declare an adjournment while the fault is addressed and the public broadcast will be paused. If it is not possible to address the fault, the meeting may be abandoned until such time as it can be reconvened. I have a number of things I'd like to say before we begin the agenda items. But first, I would like to note that Dawn Graham has left the board. On behalf of the board, I would like to thank Dawn for her attendance and contributions. A recruitment process for a scheme member or representative is currently underway. Also, I'm sure you're aware that we have a very comprehensive agenda to get through, and it is vitally important that we give each item the attention it deserves. So I encourage everyone to ask questions and raise points where necessary. Nothing should be skimmed over. However, to help us manage our time effectively, I'd appreciate if officers introducing papers could focus on the key points and members could keep their questions succinct and to the point. I hope we have a thorough and productive meeting. And given the length of the meeting that I anticipate, I will take a 5-minute comfort break at about 2 hours, at a convenient break between papers. So thank you for all of that. And Sophie, do we have any apologies for absence?
Apologies received from Councillor Simon King.
Thank you very much. Does any member wish to declare any disclosable pecuniary or non-statutory disclosable interest? I thank you very much. We're now being asked to approve the public minutes of the meeting on the 7th of February as a correct record. Is everybody happy that those are a correct record of the meeting? I see some nods of heads, so thank you very much. I certainly see no objections, so we will take that as carried unanimously. So the minutes, the recommendation to approve the minutes is carried. An updated action log has been included in the published papers. Does anybody have questions on that? And certainly Councillor Seif.
Look, I'm sorry, I haven't got the minute number. I'm juggling between the screen and my and the agenda. There was an overpayment, wasn't there? I think in November, which was reported to us. I just want to ask whether, in fact, it has been recovered.
Thank you. Can anybody update us on that?
I'm not sure that it has, but I can certainly find out and send an email round to the board after the meeting.
Thank you. That would be great, Michelle.
And can I just confirm that is separate from the other overpayment that's reported in this month? There's an yes.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. Any other points on the action log? No, it would appear not. So thank you. We will take that log as noted. Item 3 is the internal audit report. Can I ask Mary Clayton, Head of Internal Audit, to introduce the report? And I hope I got the pronunciation at least half right.
Thank you. It's definitely a tricky one. So thank you very much. My name is Mairead Claydon. I am the Head of Internal Audit and Risk Management, for those of you who are not familiar with me. And I'm bringing you a report today which has previously been to the Cambridgeshire Pension Committee in March and is now coming to do further rounds. So the key things to highlight from this report are, firstly, the findings of the internal audit review of benefits administration, which was carried out by the internal audit team covering the 2023 to 24 financial year. Members should have a copy of the full report as part of the pack, although that is a confidential item. This audit gave a good assurance on the control environment and a good assurance on compliance with controls. And secondly, to highlight our draft proposal for a 3-year rolling audit plan for the internal audit of the Cambridgeshire and Northamptonshire LGPS. You'll find the full details, both of the proposal and information on how that was developed, attached as Appendix 1 to the papers. And key things to note around it in particular are the fact that it is intended to be a 3-year rolling plan, but it is flexible, it can adapt to risk, and the intention is that members of the pension boards, pension committees, and officers within the pension service, should they feel that the plan needs adjusting to take account of new or emerging risks, are able to have input at any point by liaising with the audit team, and we can refresh and keep the contents of the plan under review. So I will leave it there for a brief introduction, but very happy to take any questions.
Thank you. And can I just remind everybody that Appendix 2 is confidential. So, Councillor Seif.
Probably reminding me. I mean, are we going to be able to discuss this report?
Yes.
At a later stage in the confidential section, or can I ask a question on it now? I mean, a detailed question.
If it's a detailed question on the confidential appendix, I would ask that you leave that until the very end when we go into private session.
Well, I'm just going to make a general point that I am actually quite hello, Mairead. Of course, I sit on audit and accounts, so I see Mairead's reports, and her team are absolutely meticulous in the audits that they conduct. And this is one that is very hard-hitting, I think, and very surprising. My question, therefore, is, in the first instance, has this been accepted by the officers? Because you make a lot of very telling points where there are weaknesses, and presumably they have been discussed with officers, and they accept the timetable for implementing the recommendations that you have made.
Thank you, Councillor Seif. So to come back on that point, yes, absolutely. The process that we go through is that when the draft report is produced by audit, we discuss that with management, and we discuss and agree the recommendations that you see at the end of the report, and management have provided their responses within the action plan that you'll be able to see, and propose those timescales. So yes, absolutely. And I believe we have had perhaps one of the actions already implemented, but I would need to double check for the exact details on where we are with that.
Well, that is the next question. We'll pick it up in the confidential section, but very much, I mean, some of those actions should have been implemented immediately without any, further delay. Anyway, perhaps we'll pick that up later. Thanks. Yeah.
Barry, if you raise your questions, please.
Yeah, it's more a general point, but it is sort of regarding the confidential paper, but it's so general, I don't think it's an issue. So the plan is to sort of widen the scope, which I kind of agree with. So it isn't just looking at a transactional issues, but sort of a general point. If both us, the board, and pension committee are looking at policies and making suggestions, what happens if, say, internal audit disagree with what's in the policy and basically it contradicts us?
It's a great question. So essentially what would happen in that instance would probably depend slightly on whether the suggestion had already been implemented in the policy. So presuming that it had been implemented, internal audit would propose what we, as part of our draft report process, we would come to management and explain why we felt there was a concern with whatever the issue was within the policy. And that would be a risk-based issue. So we would be focusing on the risk that we felt was being created by, whatever point of the policy we were disagreeing with. At that point, usually one of two things would then happen. Either management would explain to us something that perhaps audit had missed or misunderstood about why the policy is the way that it is, and that would enable us to say, okay, actually we don't feel that the risk is perhaps as big as we thought it was, or we've misunderstood something and the risk doesn't exist in the way that we had previously agreed, and we will then accept that from management. That won't go forward as part of the report. Or management will say, actually, we agree with audit, there is a risk here, and therefore we accept that something needs to happen to address that risk. That may be that they say we agree with audit's original proposal to amend the policy, or it may be that management could say, actually, we think the policy needs to stay as it is, and we would suggest addressing this risk in a different way through a different control. Perhaps we keep policy A the same, but we change process B or policy B, and we feel that that would be an alternative way of addressing the risk. And as long as, from an auditor's perspective, we are satisfied that the risk, whatever it may be, has been mitigated to a reasonable level, we're not precious about exactly how that is done, as long as we can see that management have shown us that risk will be mitigated.
Is that okay, Barry?
Sort of, I was more thinking, so the board and the committee will effectively decide what goes in the policy, or at least sign off on it. Maybe it's not a question for audit itself, but if audit are suggesting a change to that policy, surely it should come back to committee or board or whoever to look at it. It's not for management to then just change the policy.
Okay, I'm with you. So yeah, in that instance, we would make a recommendation. Management would accept the recommendation that they're going to change the policy, but the policy still has to be approved in the usual way. So if it is, a financial policy that requires approval, excuse me, from the board, then the proposed changes would still need to go to the board for scrutiny and approval. Management would obviously explain why that is proposed, but it would still be for the board to either agree or not agree. If the board did not agree with the changes, that would then come back to audit via management, and they would say, actually, the board hasn't agreed to the changes for these 3 reasons. And then we would be back in that situation of saying, what is the risk? How significant is the risk? Can we mitigate it through a different means? Or do we need to put in a report to the board explaining the issue around this action?
Yeah, that's fine. That's answered.
Val, you have some questions. And can I just remind you that Appendix 2, which is the report, is confidential. Appendix 1, which is the plan, is not. Thank you.
Okay.
Over to you, Val.
Hello, Marianne. My name is Val. I have some questions, first of all, on the audit report, but they're not detailed questions, so I don't think they come under the umbrella of confidential. First of all, I thought actually your audit report was very thorough. In fact, it's the best I've actually seen in 4 years, apart from formatting on the action plan. Plus, I would like to just make one request going forward in the executive summary, and I think it would resolve Councillor Ceith's question. Usually what I've seen in the past is the executive summary actually has a one-liner on it, which actually tells the reader that management has actually accepted the findings and put in actions in place. I think that would resolve that. And then people like us, if we want to, we can just read the executive summary and get the overall flavour of the whole report. I don't know what you think to that idea.
Yeah, happy to add that in for you. That's not a problem.
And can you do something about the formatting on the action plan, please?
Yes, I'm not sure what the issue is that you're seeing. I think the version that I've got looks okay.
One page for me, one page actually just has a heading and then nothing, and then another page,
Okay.
the formatting of the table.
Okay,
it's quite
so it
easy
may have
to
just split
resolve
across the pages. Yeah, I can have a look at that. That's fine.
Okay, I then have a question for Mark. Mark, pretty much all of the actions are due to be implemented by the 31st of the 3rd, 25. Can you tell me whether they've actually all been implemented?
They haven't all been implemented. We can provide an update. I mean, to be clear, the actions are a mixture of advisory, which internal audit will not be tracking, and medium and high, which they will. So we have been sending, so the ones that internal audit have been tracking, we've been sending updates to internal audit directly from the team. And so, for example, there are ones where, again, I'm aware of the confidentiality, but there are ones which are to a certain extent out of our control because they relate to systems that are not ours and they're wider systems, and therefore there is sometimes difficulty in getting those sort of things moved. Let's say the ones where it was our straightforward actions because they were advisory to just put in place. I think we've generally been doing that, but we'll provide an update outside the meeting to everybody on where we are with the actions.
Okay, thank you very much. Can I now just move on to the audit plan, please? I'd just like to sort of understand what is the expertise in the audit team? Because, you know, saying that, your report that you've just sent out was really good. And I just wondered what the expertise is in the team in respect of auditing pensions.
I should unmute myself to answer that question. Thank you. So my team is a fairly experienced public sector internal audit team. We have a mix of qualifications which come from the accountancy side, so a number of chartered accountants, including myself, and then the remainder of the team are chartered internal audit professionals. We also have some trainees in our team who are studying for the chartered public finance accountancy qualification. So everyone within the team is either qualified or is on the road to becoming qualified. In terms of pensions, there isn't a specific sort of pensions expertise within my team, and if we felt there were any areas where there was a need for specific expertise, we would look to bring that in. That being said, you know, we do have a range of experience with other large and complex systems, treasury management, accounts payable, payroll, things like that. So the majority of what is currently scoped to be within the audit plan, I would see that my team would be able to deliver.
Okay, can I just then, thank you for that response. Can I just then go on to, you're talking about in the audit plan about reliance on other assurance providers. From my experience working for a FTSE 100 company in internal audit, I just wondered, are you planning to do any audit work actually on the assurance providers? You know, sort of looking at their expertise, you know, sort of gathering information in respect of your audit file for, you know, sort of how much you can actually place reliance on those?
Thank you. So the key external alternative assurance provider that we have looked at are external audit. So we will naturally review the reports that they produce for the pension fund and consider that when we're scoping our work, not just in terms of the amount of assurance that we can place on them, because we would assume that we should be able to place a good level of assurance on external audit, but also to kind of direct where our work goes. Then some of the other areas that we have mentioned as being other sources of assurance for the audit team include a mix of external work. So I think the desktop exercise by Hymans Robertson was provided to us, and then also some internal work by the team around things like risk assurance matrices and the self-assessment of compliance that was undertaken around the general code of practice. And so where we're looking at those kinds of sources of assurance, we would we would aim to review the reports and consider the extent to which we are able to place reliance on those areas. Yeah.
Just one point on the self-assessment side of things. I'd have much more confidence, and if that self-assessment's actually done by somebody independent of the day-to-day operation. Is that where your thoughts would be as well?
I think, you know, when we undertake assurance exercises, generally that is what we look for. We look for independence, whether that is an external auditor or an internal auditor, where the structures allow us to have that degree of independence. So I think for best practice, always obtaining a degree of independence is really helpful. Equally, you know, it is important that operations organizations have their own quality assurance and assurance functions which are internal and which are not necessarily independent. And highly independent assurance does tend to come at a cost. So we would want to see a mix really of both that more external, more independent assurance, which, you know, my team is able to provide, and which external audit naturally do provide, and which sometimes will be commissioned in, but actually is really good practice. And we do want to see teams undertaking their own internal processes as well around providing that assurance.
So really you're talking about something like line 1A rather than just line 1 doing line
Absolutely.
1A.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm fine with that. I just have a question in respect of the plan for 25-26. You asked that actually the board would engage with you guys. The only thing I would really ask for in 25-26, I'd really like to see risk management process included in the first audit. Reason being, risk management is a linchpin of, you know, sort of risk-based auditing. And I think it would be very beneficial if that was conducted in year 1 rather than year 2, please. If the rest of the board
Absolutely. If the rest of the board is happy with that, we can make that change.
Okay, that's really the end of my questions, Mariad. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Val. Back to you, Councillor Seif. Sorry, can't hear you. Whatever's happening on your sound. There's some sort of feedback we're getting. No.
haven't done anything since I last spoke. This is very frustrating. My microphone is, the frequency is going up and down, so it must be any good now?
For me, there's still a lot of feedback. I'm not sure if is that the case for everybody else. Yeah,
it's the
It
case.
is, yeah.
I don't understand. I've got nothing else that would interfere with it. I'll tell you what, I'm going to sign off and sign in again and see if that makes any difference.
thank you.
I'll tell you what, I may sign in on another computer. No, we can't do that, can I? I'll have to use this computer. Right, I'm going to sign off and come back in.
I'll give him a minute to see if he can get back in without that feedback. But Barry, just checking with you. Val suggested that we should be moving the check on the risk strategy and register to year 1 rather than year 2. Is that something you'd support?
I would. I trust Val's judgment.
Oh, bless you. Thank you.
Well, that makes 2 of us. So let's go with that if we can, please. Sophie, is there any sign of Councillor Seif coming back in? Oh, yes, he is.
Can anybody hear me now?
Yes, we can, and we can hear you clearly. Thank you.
I'm so sorry about that. And in a way, can I continue with the point I was going to make, which was that I was going to respond to Val's question from the perspective of the Audit and Accounts Committee, which is simply this, that we ourselves asked these very similar questions about the external auditor. We had a private session with the external auditor last week, and then I think we may have even raised it in the public meeting, but we did ask about who they deploy on these quite specialist audits. And without going into great detail, we were satisfied with the response that they have indeed the right professionals to undertake this sort of work, as one would hope. But it was just to confirm that it is a matter of concern to the Audit and Accounts Committee as well. What is interesting about this one is that I don't think any of us picked up in the Audit and Accounts, but Mary can assist me on this, that these audits weren't taking place. I don't think it's ever been reported as such to the Audit and Accounts Committee, although you say that the Pension Fund Committee looked at the audit report last week. Well, that's not criticism. I'm just saying that I wasn't aware of it until I read this report, that this work had been done, and done very well, I might add. Is that helpful?
Okay, thank you very much. We're being asked to do 2 things. One is to note the report, and the other is to review and input to the internal audit strategy and plan. I'm confident that we've done the second. Do we believe that we're actually in a position to note the internal audit work, or Councillor Seif is nodding?
That's subject to asking some questions about the detail a little bit later.
Okay. So at this point, I'm going to, Mark, you have
Yes, I was just going to point out if the question is about the detail, and will you need Mairead in the room to answer that question? Because obviously, if it's much later, then she won't be here, and only officers will be here of the fund.
Thank you, Mark. Mairead?
Yes, apologies. That was going to be my point as well. Happy to take any detailed questions. Can take them by email or can take them now, but I am going to have to leave the meeting, I'm afraid.
Totally understand. Councillor Seif, are you happy to handle those questions by email?
I'm thinking about that one.
Or I'm happy to meet with you directly, Councillor Seif. If you want, I can stick a Teams meeting in for the two of us to catch up if that would be helpful.
I think the concern that I have is something that should be shared with the other members of the board and in front of the officers. But of course, I can raise the point in an email. Maybe this whole paper should have been taken in confidential session in its entirety. I can't honestly say that I'm happy to note the contents of the report without asking the questions that I do want to ask. I can't even say why I'm so concerned, because that's confidential too. So I'm in a bit of a bind here. I don't know how to deal with this one.
Is it worth you doing the email between you and Mairead and actually then distribute the email to all of us?
Barry?
Can we at least note the non-confidential section of the report, as in the audit plan?
Yes, I thought I'd said that we had done that one. Councillor Seif, okay, perhaps we ought to have taken this entirely in confidential session, but we didn't. We now have a dilemma. How would you propose that we resolve this?
Everywhere. One of the joys of being in this sort of meeting. Okay, well, no choice. I'll send an email. Yeah, I may even do it while we're. No, I will do it subsequently. I will do it next week because I won't. That will be appropriate. And then, if Mairead then sends the response to members of the committee and the officers concerned, we'll take it from there. Yeah. Okay.
So, one thing we could do is go into confidential session now, if you would like, and then would have to close the live stream and then restart the live stream and restart the public session afterwards. That would be another option.
Well, it's not for me to make that decision, but I mean, there are obviously all sorts of issues regarding doing that.
Well, Councillor Seif, I'm concerned that we've put a lot of time into this, and I'm also very concerned to come up with something that you are happy with. Can I have a decision from you on how you want to handle this?
Okay, I've also put a bit of time because I've read the report, and that takes time and thought about it. I do have concerns. I think the best thing for me to do is to put it in an email, and we'll take it forward from there.
Okay. And just checking with the other members of the board that you are basically happy with the report. So Val and Barry?
Yes.
Barry?
Yeah.
And certainly I was.
No, I am happy with the report. I'm concerned about some of the things that the report draws our attention to.
Okay.
So let's make that distinction.
Right. Thank you very much. Sophie, I hope you can handle that with the minutes. Fine. Thank you very much, Mary. Thank you for your time, and thank you and your team for the report and the plan.
Thank you very much.
Okay, moving on. Item 4 is the administration performance report. Madalena, are you with us? Yes.
Yeah.
Over to
Thank
you.
you, Chair. Yeah, I'll just summarize the report. So firstly, I would like to draw the board's attention to the administration performance for the period 1st of January to the 28th of February 2025. So for this period, 321 surveys were issued and members have given the fund's administration a rating between 3.73 and 4.45 out of 5. In regards to the service KPIs, 8 out of the 14 KPIs were not met for the 2 months reporting period. As you can see, there are 4 ambers and 4 reds. The missing KPIs were due to multiple factors, such as system workflows not being utilized effectively, sickness levels, and an increase in workflow volumes as well. As mentioned in the report, since April 2021, casework volumes within the service have increased. That's by 100% for members retiring from either deferred or active status. Currently, the work is completed within the same team, and moving forward, we are looking to review the service structure to ensure that our resources are distributed effectively. Just to mention as well, to support with the service needs and in line with the 2025-2026 business plan, the committee approved the proposal for 2 individuals to be recruited to the operations team. That is 1 pension officer and 1 pension clerk. I think the main takeaway here is that we are looking at the service structure, and hopefully that will play a role in improving the performance of the service KPIs. Just to mention, in regards to the estimates KPI, that remains red. As part of the structure review, we will look at reallocating some of the estimates work to a different team. That's just to alleviate some of the pressure in the retirements team, and that we have an aim to hopefully see an improvement in the performance of this KPI. Regarding the customer experience KPIs, I would like to remind the board that we are looking to continue to develop our analysis, and we will start to look at the retirements KPIs. Next, moving on to the receipt of employee and employer contributions, I would like to highlight a positive in this area. So in the past 12 months, 99.7% of contribution payments were received on time. Also, 99% of schedules were also received on time. Just to mention here, I would like to apologize for the error in the table in Appendix 3. It should be 99.7 as I mentioned, and not 99.3. Moving on to the overpayment in Section 10. As mentioned, the overpayment occurred due to an employer providing the incorrect leave reason for a member. This issue has been raised with the employer just to prevent reoccurrence, and an invoice has been issued as well. Moving on to the data improvement plan for 2025-2026, that's located in Appendix 5. Just to mention, the plan aims to enhance the accuracy of member data, to reduce the backlog of unprocessed undecided leavers, update the records with previous LGPS and public service membership, and overall is just to ensure an accurate benefit calculation and that we are compliant with the regulatory requirements. And lastly, just to mention, you will see in Section 12 that one employer clean slate has been mentioned both as an admission and then as a cessation. Just to offer some assurance here, the employer's admission has been backdated to September 2024, and that was done just to allow for the backdated contributions to be collected. I think that's everything I want to flag, so I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Councillor Seif.
I'd be disappointed if I didn't, I guess. Just a couple of simple questions, really. I may well have asked this before, but who sets the KPI targets? I mean, some of them seem to be quite high. Very often we don't achieve them, are we? I think I've used this term, beating ourselves up over something that is not, or very, very difficult to achieve. Where do these targets come from? Are they imposed, or are they coming from an external source? Or it's obviously our policy. We would like to achieve 90-95% on some of these. I haven't actually got the list in front of me. As I say, I'm finding it very difficult to open the agenda and keep this running at the same time. So, I mean, it's a general question.
I think I'm just going to pass this one to Mark. I think he can offer some details.
Yeah, the percentage, we ultimately set it. However, I think it's very important to note that we are going to be changing the KPIs we'll be reporting going forward from April. So those KPIs have come directly from the annual reporting guidance from SIPFA. However, even with those, the percentage we have set, and so what we've generally done, we would like to achieve 100%. I've seen funds go as low as, let's say, 75% for a green, but we ultimately think it's appropriate to pay pretty much all pensioners on time, for example. So it seems reasonable to have it that high. I think I guess then the communication we need to have with committee and board members is, if we are just under the green and it's amber, but it's like, within 1%, then, please do not get too excited by that, because we are very, very close, obviously, to being green, and the target is really, really high. I think when you push down into reds, obviously we have more concerns. And if we are consistently red, as we have been on estimates, that's where, we have to look at things and go, well, do we need to do things differently to what we're doing now? Which is the conversation we've had, because we've not been able to bring it back to, anywhere near green. So I think, yes, they are tough, but I am actually happy them being tough, as long as board and committee members are prepared to be constructive about the conversations.
Yeah, I understand it fully well. It's just that if you set a target that is never going to be achievable, and certainly many of them recur from time to time, well, they recur. I mean, as you say, I think 12 out of 28 were not achieved last time. I'm sorry, I haven't got the figure in front of me now for this period, because it was just 2 months. But is there much point? You need to set a target. I absolutely understand that, but it's just got to be reasonable. Otherwise, you're going, as you say, and we don't necessarily know in all cases just how far or why that's not been met. You do explain and you do show some figures, but I just wonder whether you'll ever get to some of those targets. However, you've explained it, and that's fine. Very quick question on late employer contributions as well. Are there persistent employers who persistently pay late? I mean, you told us about a couple that have paid late in this period. I don't know if they're the same ones that have paid late in previous periods.
Yeah, so our process is to report any employers that don't pay missed payments 3 times in a year to the pension regulator. We haven't done that. In the period, so it's not the same employers. I don't know if Ben wants to come in. He's from the funding team.
Yeah, certainly on contributions, we see a high level of contributions paid at the right time, as Madeleine has said. Actually, the 99.3 that I think was said, if you looked at those times when maybe a backs payment has gone on a Monday instead of a Friday, we're more like 100%. So, even when they're late, generally we get them in within the next couple of days. We're more like 100% in real terms, if you like.
Okay, that's great. Thanks.
Barry, you had a question.
Yeah. On the customer journey KPIs, I think I pretty much asked this last time, but page 97 of the report, there's a section on informed members who leave the scheme at or after retirement age. You explain the percentage, and then you explain within the failures, 80% in January were due to employer delays. That seems to suggest there is 20% due to our delays? Is there any sort of commentary on that?
I think we're going to take this as an action and come back with more information on that specific KPI.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mark?
Yeah, and it's not always the case that it's just us, because there is the individual in some of these as well. So, for example, we need a retirement application form from an individual. So the delay can be the individual sometimes as well. But I think you're right in that the majority will be us, and you're aware of that. Obviously, some of our issues are set out in our KPIs based on our performance. So obviously there's matching KPIs, isn't there, between the customer journey and our administration ones as well in some cases.
Michelle?
Yes, thank you. I was just going to add to that one. So in terms of the reporting of that particular KPI, so we're obviously already looking at the starters KPIs. We've started to develop the levers analysis behind these KPIs as well, because they're the most straightforward ones. As Mark rightly says, because there's so many components in the retirement ones, they're the hardest ones for us to look at, because for every single case we need to establish whether it's us as a fund, whether it's the member, whether it's employer, payroll provider, and there's so many different moving parts. The member might have AVCs and things like that as well. So it's certainly on the radar for development. We've started with the more straightforward ones, but it is in the plan, and hopefully we'll be able to bring something to you on that exact analysis.
Thank you, Michelle. If there are no other questions, we've been asked to note the administration performance report, and that we have comprehensively done. And now we're moving on to the governance and compliance report, and that is with you, Michelle.
Yes, thank you. So I think the report as a whole speaks for itself. We have got a separate report on dashboards, and the pension review will be covered at a later agenda item as well. So the only thing I really wanted to go through today was actually the information that's not in the report, and to give you some further information around the McLeod project. Kind of where the journey has taken us so far, and what we can tell you at today's date. So as you're aware, the McLeod project has been particularly challenging, very technical in nature, and accompanied over the recent times with late issuance of guidance as well. So the remedy was on the 1st of October 23, and as some assurance, all the cases that have been processed from this time have been processed in accordance with the regulation. We've mentioned before, it's the remedial work where it has been most challenging, trying to gather further information that we need to establish whether members are in scope. We did start with quite a few system errors as well at the beginning of the project. Pleased to confirm that these are all now completed. And some really good work's been undertaken by the team to get to the point where we are today. So as of today's date, we have some analysis that we can share with you today at very kind of early stages. So for the pensioner records, we do know that for the Cambridgeshire fund, there's 140 records where the final guaranteed amount does bite, 31 of which are already in payment as the retirement was processed after October 23, when the administration system was updated to be able to cope with those. This leaves 109 cases to rectify. But just to give some additional context, obviously we've talked before about the magnitude of this project and in times of resource. So what we've looked at just on the information that we have is pre-conversion, the average amount per individual per annum is £161.77, and the range of this is between £5 and 1,710. So just to kind of give a bit of context of obviously all the work that we've done in trying to obviously get the picture of where we are. We're still going through verification processes as well. So as I say, when this is a point in time, anybody can come back and obviously provide additional details as well. Just another point with the cases that we have identified, so of that 140, extra due diligence will be undertaken just to absolutely make sure that the service is still correct on the records and the guaranteed amount is in fact due and correct. So yes, we are will get to the point where the kind of project comes to a close and everything will fall into business as usual. The final backstop for all of these cases with any remedial work will be at the point of retirement, where we will ask a final time for any previous service. And of course, as members go through the kind of journey, the underpin may come in or go out of play at any time as people kind of transfer in and transfer out of benefits. So it's always a moving target that we're never going to be 100% sure on the figures at any one time. But hopefully that kind of just analysis at the point in time is useful just for the kind of context around the project at the moment. The only other thing is to mention is around the annual benefit statements. So we've now received confirmation that our software provider will release a template in late May, which does account for the underpin. There's some further questions around how that actually looks, and obviously we'd need to do some testing around that template as well, just to make sure that the data and the processing of that all aligns. We do have the ability to exclude certain categories if for any reason we cannot produce the underpin for those particular areas. We do have the discretion to exclude them. Just very importantly, though, if we do choose to go down that route, we need to have a very good reason, and we do need to communicate that point as well. But I think that's the main update on the McLeod project. I'm happy to take any questions on either that or any other detail in the overall report as well.
Can I just say something, Barry? Thank you, Michelle. And I'm sure the pensioner getting an extra £1,700 a year will really appreciate all the hard effort that this has taken you and the rest of the team. The person getting 5p may feel differently. Barry, over to you.
Yeah, I asked this at the pre-meeting, but so presumably if annual benefit statements will have a section on the McLeod, I think you explained before, if it doesn't apply, what is it likely to show?
Yeah, and I think they're the things that we need to investigate once it's very difficult at the moment because we haven't actually seen the final version of the template. There's also additional questions around certain categories that people fall into and whether it should be showing for everybody. So whether it should be zero amounts for some people, how the splitting of those guaranteed amounts should look. So I'd probably say at the moment, it's probably something we'll come back to you on when we've got a bit more further clarification around that.
Thank you very much, Michelle. If there are no other questions, then we have duly noted the governance and compliance report. And thank you, Michelle, for all the effort behind that, and particularly that update on numbers today. Right. Item 6 is the annual business plan. I think that one's over to you, Mark.
It is. Thank you, Chair. And before I do just introduce this briefly, if I could just say we are aware of the number of reports that are coming through to you. Clearly what's happening with everything going on, the number of sort of specific reports on particular projects, etc., is increasing. So we're having to bring lots more ad hoc reports to you. So what we're going to try to do going forward is be more succinct and aggregate some of our, if you like, our standard business as usual reports. So still make sure we get the correct, all the information you need across. But we will, for example, look at the administration more holistically in a single report is the way we plan to do it. So we'll see how it goes next time we do that. And obviously you can feedback as to whether that's working or not. But having said that, if I could just introduce this report, which looks back on the previous year. So there's the appendix showing the first appendix showing the rank status of the projects for last year. So appendix 1, page 127, 3 amber. McLeod, we've already discussed. It was around the complexity. It was around the late guidance, which enabled us to start or forced us to start late. But I am pleased with progress. We are making tangible progress as Michelle just described. The process of undecided leavers, we actually outperformed what we targeted this year. So we started with 7,500 cases. We said we'd clear 1,000. We've done nearly 250 extra cases beyond the 1,000. So we're at 6,270 now. So that's pleasing progress versus target. It's amber because there's lots of pressures competing with that resource at the moment. That's why that's amber. The investment consultancy contract was amber simply because we had to change plans mid-year due to the Fit for the Future consultation. And so that's in an amber status whilst we understand exactly what advisory services will be provided by the pool instead of us being able to go out and source that consultancy advice. There was a few, so the rest are green. Having said that, there were obviously a few where we changed tack during the year, particularly EDI, where because of competing pressures, you remember we did ask for a revised timeline, which was agreed, hence it is green against that new timeline, but was changed during the year. So that's the progress against last year. The new, I think the new plan has in it what you'd expect in terms of that mix of procurements and activities that are continuing and activities that are new. I would say some of the activities towards the end, which relate to Fit for the Future, there is some uncertainty because obviously what we have is consultation proposals. There hasn't been a response to the consultation yet by government. So they haven't absolutely confirmed exactly what they will be doing, nor the timeline. But so what we've done is we've obviously done our best estimate at what that looks like and what we're likely to have to do. And we will evolve that if needed. I don't think there's any particular surprises within those activities, but happy to take any questions on them. The final thing I was going to pick up on before opening to questions was on the financials. So that is in the main. Sorry, I've just completely lost my. There we go. That's in the main body of the business plan before the activities. I'm just scrolling down to it now. So page is 138, 139. The bit in our control is obviously the admin expenses. The admin expenses in the table where it breaks that down, you'll see there's a fairly significant increase in staffing costs. That is not due to the new post, that is inflationary and particularly the impact of NI within that, which has gone up. And the other one, which you'll notice is quite a difference, is overhead recovery. And the reason that is because there's been an attempt to rebase that because it hasn't been moving in the way it should over the years. So since 2021 and unitary, it has never been zero-based and analysed line by line, which we were expecting. We have increased with inflation, but we've never really looked at the cost drivers across all of the lines. And so within that are things like, for example, payroll costs. And so this time what we did is we looked at how our pensioner numbers have increased and then applied the appropriate cost driver and then the inflationary uplift. And so in effect, it's bringing it to where it should have probably been moving towards that direction over the years, but hasn't. So that is our best estimate of what it should be right now. But I believe it will be looked at from scratch at some point in the near future as well. With that, I'll hand over to see if there's any questions.
Councillor Safe. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we've got a bit of feedback and we can barely hear you.
Oh, for heaven's sake. I don't know what to say. Take another
Sorry.
question. I'll come back in.
I was going to say, if everyone mutes, I'm wondering if it's caused by certain phones. That's sometimes a problem, isn't it?
I can hear you all clearly, but you can't hear me. Or you can. Am I clear now? I'm so sorry.
I think you're clearer when Councillor Payne put his microphone on, when the chair put his phone on. Let's just, if you speak, we'll see how it goes.
All right, okay. Yes, Mark, you mentioned LGR, and quite rightly, we don't know how that's going to pan out, and particularly, as you say, the number of alternative proposals gone in, and that's the first stage. But nevertheless, I note that the business plan, which does go up to 27, it seems that the staffing is shown as being the same. I think, I just wonder whether you have given any thought to how you might deal with the reorganisation, because although if everything stays as it is, then that's not too much of a problem. But people, members may need to be transferred out, I don't know, and it's possible that other pension funds may be transferred in. Nobody knows how this would work, but presumably, obviously you're taking in new employers all the time on a sort of regular basis, but you may then get a large batch coming in, or indeed a large batch coming out, which would require quite a lot of resource. So I just wonder whether any thought at this stage can be given to that.
Yeah, so I think first thing to say, I will probably be put in an activity during the course of this year relating to that, but we have actually gone through this with Northamptonshire. So we are one of the few funds, well, we are one of the few teams administering who have actually gone through this process. So we do know what is likely to happen. I would say as long as the reorganisation is within the existing Cambridgeshire geography. If it's not, then it becomes incredibly painful from a LGPS perspective, because if you start moving chunks of liabilities between funds, that's very, very expensive. It's very time consuming in terms of the work of the actuary. But as long as it's within a geographical boundary, there is a quite a clear path, and there's pragmatic ways you can deal with it. So in effect, what you're doing is you are effectively aggregating the local authorities into either one or two, probably. So you'd look at the existing assets, liabilities, and determine, who's the admin authority and what that new shape looks like. You've obviously got to communicate with all members at those local authorities, because they will be changing employer and have options. But again, there's a pragmatic path through that, which we did for the entirety of the members at the Northamptonshire local authorities. So let's not pretend it's not work and an additional pressure, but there is as I say, we are familiar with the pathway through that, actually, including the liaison with government over changes to the regulations to deal with the new admin authority, the other unitary, let's say, for example. But the first thing, obviously, is to establish what the shape of the reorganisation is, and from there we will give our input and expertise into the process.
Yeah, you're quite right. We have to wait until that new unitary emerges, or unitaries, and you're quite right. But your response gives me confidence that you are going to be dealing with this as you have done in the past. So good news. Thank you.
Val, over to you.
Thank you, Dennis. Just a couple of questions, Mark. Item 3.3, page 123 of your report, it says with increasing complexities of the scheme, increasing workflow, etc., do you mean is this just related to Cambridgeshire, or does this include Northants? Does this include all LGPS funds? Is it much wider than just Cambridgeshire with these difficulties?
Yeah, oh yes, it's the it's the external pressures
Okay.
come in from, some of it is just LGPS specific, some is obviously more generalized. I think you just have to look at well, we didn't used to have a dashboard report, we didn't used to have McLeod, we didn't used to have the GCOP changes, which are fed through to tons of policies. And it's not even just administration, it's the sort of the investment side, it's the account side, it's everything basically.
And my next question, this is just a really pitty little thing. The undecided leavers reduction on page 146 is 2,000 reduction a year. Actually, in the admin pack, it says 2,500. So maybe you just want to align your reports and what staff
Yes, okay,
they're doing.
thanks. Yeah, yes, okay, absolutely. Sorry, it's a lot of pages to read, it's a lot of pages to prepare as well, and sometimes I'm afraid mistakes do creep through. Do apologise. Thank you.
Okay, that's the end of that. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Val. There are no other hands visible, and we're being asked to note 4 things this time around. The status of the year-end business plan activities for 2024-25. The cyber action plan year-end position, which is in Appendix 2 exempt. And the contents of the business plan and medium-term strategy and associated budget. And also the climate action plan for 2025-26. I believe we have more than adequately done that. So thank you very much, one and all. Item 7 then is, Michelle, is the training strategy.
Yes, thank you. So at the previous meeting, we had some discussion around what the likely updates will be to the strategy, and the strategy has since had these additions added, and it's also been to the committee. So as we kind of previously mentioned, but just to kind of put into context why we needed some changes. 2 drivers really. One was to be compliant with the Pension Regulator Code of Practice, and the second reason was in anticipation of the requirements that we think are due to come in as a result of the pension review, and these do incorporate the Scheme Advisory Board Good Governance Review recommendations. So in terms of the code of practice requirement, the governing body is to regularly carry out an audit of its members' skills and experience to identify gaps and imbalances. So I think on this particular point, I think we'd probably agree that we've got quite a good training structure now. Obviously, we use the Lola platform, and we have a training schedule that we attach to the governance and compliance reports at each meeting. I think the bit where we would struggle to demonstrate compliance at the moment is around identifying those gaps and imbalances. So with that in mind, and obviously looking at the pension review, so that angle is kind of looking at committee members and officers having the appropriate level of knowledge and understanding that their roles require, but also importantly looking for the pension committee and local pension board to be aligned in that as well. So in light of those two requirements, we believe that the most efficient and pragmatic way to achieve this is to participate in the national knowledge assessment exercise, where effectively we would be able to demonstrate the skills and knowledge of the board and the committee. And we can then come up with detailed action plans off the back of that, having some intel, obviously, of what that looks like. So just for some additional context, obviously, first hearing that, it might sound a little bit daunting, having to go through assessments. So the assessment itself is aligned to the 8 core LOLA modules that obviously we're all familiar with and have obviously been undertaking that training over the last year or so. Takes approximately 15-20 minutes to complete. The assessment will be open for 2 to 3 weeks, and importantly can be undertaken by members at any time within that at your own convenience. There is just one attempt, but answers can be changed up until the point of submission. So in terms of the strategy itself, I have put in there that members are expected to participate to demonstrate the compliance. And this is really important that actually we have all members buy-in from the committee and the board, because obviously if we don't have either any or many members participating, it's going to be very hard to get those training plans going forward. We do want a true reflection of everybody that has a position. So the next exercise is due to run in 2026, that we actually think is quite good timing, because it will give sufficient time for any new members following the local elections, and just give that bit of time to obviously get them up to speed as well. So just linking the risk element to this, obviously to training, just mentioned the local elections. So obviously we need to make sure at all times that people have the appropriate skills and knowledge to make informed decisions. 2 risks really linked to this. So we've obviously got the risk that firstly members won't stand or won't get re-elected. There's also a secondary risk around if members are re-elected, might not necessarily be put on this particular board or indeed the pension committee. So we've obviously had to start thinking about the risk around that and actually what mitigations we can put in place. So we have scheduled a induction training / networking event prior to the June committee meeting, to be able to obviously give some of that fundamental training. The networking event also ties in really nicely with the effectiveness reviews, where both the committee and the board said actually it'd be quite nice to get the engagement increased between the 2 bodies as well. And one other point was just to make sure that members were absolutely clear that the intention is to change the completion of the LOLA modules from 12 months down to 6 months. This is to be in line with the pension regulator expectations. And I do feel we've all had enough time now to get used to the platform and obviously understand what it's all about and make sure we can prioritise there. And really just a final point around the survey that was undertaken. So we undertook a survey as we promised we would do right back at the start of the going with the LOLA platform, just to make sure that people were happy and members were happy with the level of training that they were receiving. Overall, the results were positive. There were a few comments that were received as part of that exercise. So just to confirm that we have fed those back to Hyman's, and it's actually been really useful because what it's managed to do is actually have some influence about further developments with them as well. So hopefully some of the things that you've raised will be picked up and actually looked at future versions. So thank you for all those comments. Just on a very, very final point, one of the questions previously were about comparable products. So I did take that away and I have had a look. At the moment, there's just one competitor in the market that is at very, very early stages of development. So at the moment, we're happy that the LOLA platform is the best option we have, but obviously we will keep reviewing that every time that we review the training strategy. All the updates are included in section 3.15 in the table. I think the important thing is, from our point of view, we're really trying to get the balance right between obviously our regulatory compliance, but obviously very conscious of members' time, and trying to make sure that we're not being too overwhelming in what we're asking as well. So hopefully the board will agree this approach, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Michelle. Over to you, Councillor Seif.
I can't hear you. I don't know if anybody else can.
I can't hear him at all.
No.
This is
Oh,
ridiculous.
I can a bit now.
Sorry. Okay. I'll talk slowly and loudly.
You're quite clear at this
I
point.
can now, yeah.
Okay, right. I've moved the computer a little bit. I do not gainsay the need for training for all members of this board, and I'm sure that all the subject areas which need to be covered must be covered. But I'm going to ask a very simple question to start with, and then I'll see what your answer is and perhaps lead up with some other questions. What happens if we don't pass the assessment? Suppose my party, the lead party, or indeed any party on the council decides that Jeff Seif is going to be a member of this particular board, or for that matter, the pension fund, and we are then assessed, perhaps even having done training, and fail and don't pass the assessment. How do you deal with that?
My view on that would be that we would provide a supporting role in that rather than, any other approach. So if, depending on what was failed, if it was just one or two modules or whether it was all, I would envisage that we'd put some extra time and effort into training individuals on the respective committees or boards. So it might be one-on-one training on particular topics. I think it'd be very hard to say we're expecting everybody to pass first time, and what have you. And I think that's
or it may be actually unacceptable to the council itself that particular person should not sit on that board for whatever reason they may have. Obviously, there would be concerns. If we can't pass the assessment, there must be something wrong, and then we would need that support. I think my general point, though, is absolutely, I have personally found it extremely difficult to undertake all the training. I'm obviously undertaken quite a bit. I stopped doing that. I enjoyed the live or the interactive training that we had a couple of months ago. I thought that was very effective, although it didn't actually tell me anything I really didn't know. But many of us come to the board or to be councillors from a variety of backgrounds and disciplines. And my own, for what it is worth, is that I'm a chartered accountant, and although I don't practice financial management these days, I'm working in a different area, but my experience, it is believed by my colleagues, is suitable for this board. And things like conflicts of interest, I mean, it's just so natural to me. I don't need training on it. It's in my DNA. That's what I've been brought up with all my professional life. And there's a whole host of other things. The detailed regulations around pensions, and in particular, investment side of it, I don't necessarily need for this board, but obviously an understanding is helpful. So, in a way, you almost need to tailor training to individuals rather than, have a much wider set of training, which, some people it won't be appropriate for, or they've already covered it through their other professional activities. I mean, I obviously have to do CPD in my own profession as well. It does cover a lot of the things that we talk about here. And just to go back on the subject we were talking about earlier in the internal audit, I mean, all the questions that I've got to Mairead really arise from my own experience of dealing with systems and system control weaknesses and so forth. So, I don't think anybody can train me on that. You'd have to retrain me in my profession to be able to answer those.
And those points absolutely noted. So I think in terms of the training, actually this knowledge assessment might actually help us with that, because actually if people are passing certain modules and nothing has changed, you might say, well, actually you don't need to worry about those, but these are the ones that we do recommend you do. Obviously the Lola platform's there for just a general understanding for everybody, and we have to be quite pragmatic in the way we operate, because obviously there's so many members across the committee and board also. The only other thing I kind of just wanted to touch on was, obviously you talked about members failing, and obviously there'll be a process. But there's also obviously non-compliance in terms of the members not undertaking the training at all. As you'll recall from last year, a few reminders going round to remember to do the training. So there is an escalation there as well. So at the first point of call, it'll always go through the chair of either the board and the committee. But actually, as an absolute backstop, if we've got any non-compliance of not doing the training, or actually if people have been failing quite regularly on the same things, that decision ultimately then sits with the monitoring officer at Cambridgeshire County Council. So we have a mechanism where we effectively let them know, anybody that hasn't undertaken the core training. And then obviously if she wants to come back and give us any, kind of guidance off the back of that as well. So there is a real true consequence as well if, we can't get to quite where we need to be. So, but there are controls in place around it.
You make a good point there. Yeah. Thank
you. Barry, you have a question?
Yeah, Michelle, you did make the point, and I appreciate that's where you're going to get the biggest turnover of committee and board members when there are elections. You're glad that the knowledge assessment is not until next year, gives you a bit of time. But there's also the potential, because we've had a vacancy on the member side on the board for quite a long time, and then it was filled for a short time. You potentially could have a situation where someone joins as a member rep, be it on the committee of the board, and they might only have joined maybe a couple of months before that assessment. And obviously you don't join a board or committee and then instantly become a pensions expert. You need some period of time.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And I think, for all of these assessments we do that are at a particular point in time, there's always going to be the exceptions. And, we need to take account of that effectively. So if the results come through on a newer member actually not passing all the modules, I think, that's a very valid thing to happen. And we just make sure that obviously we continue that training path with them, so that actually in the next 2 years when they take it again, hopefully we see some improvement there. So yeah, absolutely. As you say, turnover can happen at any time. We're concentrating at the moment about the elections. But we will be mindful of that going forward as well. And we're speaking with Hymans at the moment around automating some of the processes within the Lola platform as well, in terms of reminders and things like that, so that we can really try and keep on top of it.
Michelle, just one question from me. 11.5, which is top of page 175. You refer to the following training is also encouraged. I think my perception is that with the COVID shutdown, and then everybody trying to get back to some sense of normality, I certainly feel that I have been doing less of that, and I know that some of our county council members are sufficiently busy that they're probably doing none of that. And I'm just a little interested or concerned as to how much we are expecting people to actually come in via with improving their knowledge and understanding via that particular route.
So I would say in terms of kind of seminars, conferences, kind of working groups and all that type of thing, there's definitely been a shift since COVID. Obviously, before that time, everything was face to face. There tends to be now a bit of a mixture from what I've seen in the industry in different ways, shapes and forms. Some are face to face still. Some of the kind of asset pooling things tend to be face to face. We've also got a few conferences now that do a hybrid approach. Some of the networking is done via Teams only. So I think there's quite a good mix of things out there at the moment. What I probably would say in terms of compliance, these are all these supplementary routes. So, you know, if a member wanted to go on a conference, whether it be remotely or in person, and we've approved it as to be of value. We're obviously very comfortable with that. But at the same time, if people don't want to do that and they want to do their core training and obviously just participate in the knowledge exercise, I think more importantly, the training that we deliver specifically. So we obviously have our topics, don't we, where we kind of have the committee and the board on certain areas like fit for the future consultation and things like that. They are probably for me the more key things that would benefit the board more so. But obviously we like to offer a range of different things because everybody learns differently and everybody has different interests.
Thank you. Val?
Thank you very much, Dennis. Couple of questions. 5.3, it talks about pension fund has adopted Hyman's Robinson online training, etc. The areas to be covered are committee role and pensions legislation. Does that actually incorporate the board role as well?
I believe it should do. I haven't actually done, I have done the training, but not actually for a while to remember if it's in there. But what I do know is the introductory training that we're doing prior to the first committee training is absolutely going to cover that as a main topic as well, because we just feel that that's really important to start everybody off on the right foot of actually understanding the committee role and the board role, and obviously what the interactions are, and obviously what the roles are. So I'm pretty sure it does, but if not, we've got it covered in the separate training as well.
Michelle, I can't make the training on the 18th of June. Is there any chance it can be recorded?
I will look into that. It's an in-person one. So at the very least, I should be able to at least share some slides with you if it can't be recorded. But yeah, we'll see what we can do. But if it's not recorded, we can certainly share the slides.
Okay. Next point I've got is regarding markets in financial instruments directive, and talking about the professional investor rather than retail investor, and that we need to, the board needs to have sort of more, I say, knowledge of, you know, sort of types of investments. Any idea when this is coming in? Sorry.
I don't know if Mark or Ben has got a comment on. They're stronger on investments than me, that's for sure.
It's 9.1, markets in the MiFID 2. The Cambridgeshire Pension Fund needs to demonstrate a high level of skills and knowledge across committee and board to enable the fund to opt up and be recognised as a professional investor rather than a retail investor.
I think that's already something that we're looking at. Is that right? Yeah, I think
it's
already in place.
It's a requirement that came in a number of years back, and we have to do things like evidence what training regime we have in place for members, and a lot of it's around the collective knowledge, of course, and the ability of the decision makers to make appropriate decisions with regards to investments. But yeah, that was a big change in the industry that required quite a bit of work a number of years ago to opt up. And every time we engage with a new investment manager that we haven't been involved with before, there's an opt-up process to be a professional investor there as well. So it just goes on behind the scenes, but it's leveraging the existing processes that we have in place.
Okay, so really we are already recognised as professional investor.
Yeah.
Okay. And is there anything else? No, I think that's it. Thank you very much.
Barry.
I'm glad you brought us back to 11.5 because I had put a note against it and kind of missed it, so I didn't raise it earlier. The first point, in-house and shared training events, it says with Cambridgeshire Fund. I wonder whether it's meant to say Northamptonshire Fund.
Yeah, good spot. Thank you. We'll get that changed.
And on spotting things, since Val raised 5.3, of course 5.4 and 5.5 aren't actually there. So you may wish to remember 5.6.
Yeah,
Sorry,
will do.
I was only just Val picking that one up.
Yeah, before we publish, we'll make sure we tidy it up. Thank you.
Okay, no problems. If there are no more questions, we've been asked to review the pension funds training strategy, and I think that's been fairly thoroughly done. Thank you very much. Now, the next item is the comms strategy and plan, and I believe Sharon is going to be introducing this report. If you can give us the highlights, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Our communications strategy was last updated 2 years ago. We review our policies every year, and this year we felt there were sufficient material changes to take back to committee. The communications strategy and plan were approved by the Pensions Committee on the 20th of March this year. And I'm just going to highlight some of the key changes to the communication strategy, which is in Appendix 1. So we wanted to add the pensions regulator general principles for member communications to the strategy. These state that member communications should be clear and concise. And this is something that we are already doing, but we just wanted to publish it in the policy. And we're currently using tools like the Hemingway editor and Copilot to help us with this. They also state that we should regularly review member communications. And good examples here are with the new website. So we did take on board feedback to make the pensioner section more prominent. And we're also surveying members in June to find out what they think of the new website now it's been built. Another of the pension regulators' principles was to use various communication methods. And we're doing this by giving members printed communications if that's their preference, and also making online content that's compatible with screen readers. We also updated the strategy to include equality impact assessments, and that was so that we're reflecting that we're using them for our new projects and policies, or where we're updating existing ones. For example, with this strategy. We added a section on statutory communications. So examples here are annual benefits statements. We need to issue these no later than the 31st of August. If there's a material change to scheme information, members need to be updated within 3 months. We added a new section on AI. This is becoming rapidly popular. And the new section reflects that we're keen to get the benefits from AI, but recognise that human interaction is still necessary to sense check this. And so whilst updating the strategy, it gave us an opportunity to update figures like the number of member records per category, and also to add a benchmark in where we're comparing our online pension account take-up with other pension funds. And on this, you can see that we've just over half our member records have signed up to the online pension account, and this compares to an average across other funds of about a third. Our communication plan, which is Appendix 2, reflects our key projects this year, some of which we've already touched on, like McLeod and Pensions Dashboard. Also this year is going to be a big project for us, our enhanced member self-service portal, and also the valuation, which I believe we might touch on later. There's lots of employer communications activities for that. An example recently being the employer forum. And as I touched on, customer satisfaction review of the new website. And it also reflects our statutory communications, cyclical newsletters, surveys, and employer training. So that's the key highlights of the strategy and plan. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Well, I've got a few points, if I may.
Sure.
There were some late changes made to the annual report, and I'd just like to say thank you for getting that to happen. That's not a question, it's just saying thanks, that was great. 3.9, you refer to chatbots, and I just wondered, I would guess that a fair number of questions that people may have will be common across all funds. And I just wondered whether there's any national initiatives there that we might tag into.
So that is on our wish list. We think that, we'd like to enhance the functionality of our website. And we think that a chatbot could actually help us or help members and employers with common questions. So I know at the moment that our digital team are currently working on a chatbot elsewhere in the council, and we're keen to use the learnings that they have with introducing that to maybe help us with our website. I believe that you can restrict the content that the chatbot searches. So it's possible that we could potentially link it to our website and potentially also, I guess, the national members' website in terms of using that technology. I don't know whether that's answered your question.
Well, I just didn't know whether you knew of any national initiatives to build one, and by the sounds of it,
not yet. No,
yeah.
not to the best of
Okay.
my knowledge. No.
Okay. Another question on employer engagement. I attended the recent employer forum, and I think it was probably less than 10% of our employer schemes employers did. And I just wondered whether that's something we feel we need to do anything about, or whether we've got the adequate communications with employers that the forum is very much a nice to have rather than anything else.
That is a concern. Interestingly, I was at the National Communications Working Group yesterday, and I raised it there. And other funds were saying that they also shared the same problem, and actually getting lower percentages than we actually get. We do try and encourage as many employers to come along as possible. We sort of ring round and try and sort of convince people to come and ensure that it will be informative for them. But it's something that we're looking at. We're planning to have another forum later on in the year. We're thinking about whether to do it face to face, whether that might encourage more people to come or not. I don't know.
Okay.
But it is something that we're looking to. We are looking at it, but and it's something I think that's common across all funds, unfortunately.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, I can believe it's common. One final point from me, page 203, you've missed an E out of Cambridgeshire.
Oh, I do apologise. I'll get that
Yeah.
changed before we publish it.
Val, you have a question?
Yeah, I have 4 questions. Hello,
Okay.
Sharon. First of all,
Hi.
the paper, the introductory page of the paper doesn't actually tell us what you want the board to do.
Ah, okay. Yes, it's to note the changes.
Thank you. I thought it was.
Sorry.
Next thing, I also have got a comment on 3.9. It may be my age, but I absolutely hate chatbots. And I wonder if there's something that could be put, if you go ahead with this, is if we put in some, like, can I speak to a human, please? Whether it would put us through to a human. Because often often when you type into these things, it just doesn't answer what you want, and it's probably a more complicated type of question. So that's
yes. Yeah, no, thank you. That's a valid point, and we do try wherever possible. We appreciate that not everybody communicates in the same way or likes to seek information in the same way. So that's certainly something, and I think it was actually raised at committee as well. So yeah, that's something we will note. Thank you.
Okay. That's that one. Let me just go on to it. Next one. This is actually in the communication policy. A couple of times, if I can find it, particularly sort of like on page 190, you mention in 7.6, a scheme member can opt out of electronic communications by writing to us or by email. An email is electronic communication. You know, it's sort of,
Yeah,
just a bit my sense of humour here. Don't know whether that email needs to be in there.
It used not to be, but we added it in because people were doing it, and we didn't want to restrict. We thought it was a bit unfair to make them pay for postage to actually opt out. So we widened it.
Okay, all right. I see your point.
Can
I see your point.
I jump in there because I work at a contact centre. Some people, yeah, they ask that you don't communicate electronically, but they are happy to send an email, so it is a valid point.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And the last one is the human contact details are on page 203 of the policy, of the pack. It's sort of 20 pages in from sort of asking people to write in. It just seems a lot of stuff that people have got to go through to actually find where to write to. Do you get what I mean? If they want to say, I don't want anything else, you know, the actual contact details are so far, you know, down the paperwork. It would take somebody an awful long time to come to where they need to actually, you know, sort of send any queries or communications about the strategy.
I understand that. I think we were just following the template of all the other reports. I think that's where that's come in. I think we used to have it on the front page and on the back page, but because we were updating the communication strategy, I was following the new standard template for the reports, and I think the standard was to have it at the back. But I can see why in this instance it might make sense to have it more prominent at the front as well, potentially.
If I could come in on that one, sorry.
Sorry, someone else has.
Yes. Yes.
Decide how to contest. They're using another approach, aren't they? So we will communicate them on the minutiae, and we will say to them outright, if you don't want electronic communications, do this. Whereas this is just a strategy. Which,
yes.
You're right, Sharon. Sharon complies with all our current template. So I think Val, just to reassure you, we are very, very clear when we're giving the people the option to opt out of electronic communications. You know, it will be a communication to them, and it will say in that communication what they need to do if they're not happy.
Okay.
Yes, I think it would be unlikely that they'd be reading the strategy and then decide to opt out after that. It's generally sort of more day-to-day communications where they decide actually it's more likely we may have proactively contacted them and then they ring up or in however way they prefer, really, and let us know.
I suppose really where I was coming from is, not necessarily county council. It's when you try and contact anyone these days, you're searching and searching for actually contact details. Sort of a lot of companies don't seem to want humans to talk to each other anymore. And they always sort of go back, well, you can find it on the website. And you think, yes, I've been on the website and that's why I'm trying to contact a human and I can't find what I'm looking for. That's really where I was coming from.
Right.
Val,
Yeah.
I spent a bit of time this morning actually on the website looking for something, and the contact us was very clear and very easy to find. So don't worry about that.
Okay, I completely take that back.
That's good to hear. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Sharon.
Michelle, over to you.
Yeah, sorry, just slightly backtracking, really. It was just a point that Sharon had made, obviously, when we were talking about the employer forums as well. Just for a bit of context, I know that Corey had said that sometimes, although the numbers don't look maybe as high as we would expect, sometimes actually the key members are attending. And for example, with multi-academy trusts, so where as in the past, we've obviously seen each academy possibly, sending a representative. There might be one key member actually representing, say, 10 academies on that particular employer forum. So actually that knowledge quite possibly is getting out there. And I know he said that was the case at the forum as well, that there were a few employers actually representing wider than just the one. So I just thought I'd make that point just to say, actually, there does need a push and some analysis, but actually it might not be as bad as it maybe first appears.
Thank you. That's useful. I obviously couldn't tell that. Right. If there are no more questions or issues, we've been asked to note the communication strategy and communications plan. We've done that. Thank you very much. And thank you, Sharon, for your time and presentation and time on all of this. Thank you very much. The next item is the risk strategy. Can I just remind everybody that Appendix 4 is confidential. It's coming up to 10 to 12. Do people want to take a break now, or shall we take that break after this item? Quick vote, please. Take a break now or after this item? Val?
After, please.
Sorry?
After, please.
After. Barry, you okay with that? Councillor Seif's okay. So,
I prefer now, but that's my opinion.
Well, can we
I'll
just
go with whatever people need?
I think I'm okay. If Barry is okay, then can we actually just go for it? And Michelle, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. And I'll try and keep it quick and to the point. So the risk strategy has gone through a full review again, really lending to the general code of practice and some updates we needed to make there. All the changes are contained in the table in 6.2, but really just to pull out a few of the highlights of that. One update based on the code is the pension committee will now be seeing the risk register at every meeting. We obviously have been operating currently under the basis that the board sees at every meeting and the committee twice a year. We'll obviously have a think about that for the next meeting, about how those dynamics will work, and obviously just make sure that we're conveying information and that any comments obviously going backwards and forwards between the register are captured appropriately. A roles and responsibilities section has been added to show clear separation of duties, which is becoming quite a standard thing, just to make sure obviously that's clearly documented. One other significant update is around the treatment of risks. So I think this actually came as part of the code, but also part of an audit review as well. So we're now looking to have risk termination, reduction, tolerance and transfer, and all of the risks will fit into categories as well. So obviously that we can categorise those risks going forward. In the appendix, there's a new risk register template, which sets out how that's going to look going forward. One of the key things as well, and I know Councillor King was very keen for this, was the ability to be able to distinguish between public and exempt risks going forward. So going forward, the main risk register can be in the public domain, and we'll just have an exempt appendix just for some of the items we can't have, things like such as cyber and things like that. We're hoping that the heat pad analysis will provide a good visual of where the fund risks sit. And really just confirmation that we are going to retain the risk dashboard and risk assurance tables, because we do really feel that they add benefit with you really focusing on where the changes are each time, and obviously the highest risks facing the fund. So we're hoping to fully populate the template for the June committee and the July pension boards. Happy to take any questions on the strategy or the template. We have obviously put in a copy of the risk register just for oversight as well. But obviously, if there's any questions on that, we'll just defer that to exempt session. Thank you.
Councillor Seif? You're very quiet.
I'm not a very quiet person, really. I think, Dennis, can you mute? I think apparently it works better when you're muted.
There's no feedback at the moment, so...
Oh, right, okay, don't mute it. In that case, I'm sorry. Somebody mentioned it before. Right, I'm looking at the red line. I'm on page 235, paragraph 10.9, and this may be a function of my misunderstanding, but it says there that something to the effect that if the risk materializes and requires additional expenditure, it shall be approved by the pension committee. We get these reports all the time. I mean, the business plan every quarter. Are we just receiving this information without having any ability to comment and approve? As the board, I would have thought we would have been the ones to approve the expenditure or major expenditure changes, not the investment committee or the, I don't know. I may have got my functions confused, so perhaps somebody can assist me on that one.
Yeah, so effectively, extra expenditure will be the pension committee, but what the role of the board will be to do is to flag any issues. So in an ideal world, what would happen is we'd bring that to you first for your opinion, which is what we've kind of been trying to do for previous reports, to bring everything to you first. And then we basically took a consolidation of, this is what the board said about these points. Are you happy? So I think what would happen in the same way is if we wanted additional expenditure, depending on the timing of the meetings, we would always go for bringing it to you first if we could. For you to comment, then we would go to the committee and say, the board have recommended this. Are you happy with that?
Is it worth changing that wording on that policy to reflect that? Because it wasn't clear to me. And I would have thought that the board should have some say in a major change when a risk has materialised.
Yeah, absolutely. We can add something in there to basically say that the board will have oversight, preferably pre. Sometimes it's post scrutiny, but yeah, sure, we can add something in for that relationship. Yeah, thank you.
Well,
thank you, Dennis. Okay. When I was reading this through, the new strategy through, I was struggling with this document, and I have discussed this. I discussed this with Dennis a couple of days ago, and also I have emailed Michelle and Mark and copied Dennis in. What does not come across to me is, with sufficient clarity, is the roles and responsibility of Northants, plus the role and accountabilities of Cambridgeshire County Council. Though section 14 of the risk strategy goes into detail about the roles and responsibilities of the committee, board and fund officers, I do not feel it goes far enough. For example, it's not clear that the fund officers actually work for West Northants, for example, or that the committee and the board are actually Cambridgeshire County Council. I'm just hoping I've got my head straight on this, but if not, really, apologies, guys. Cambridgeshire County Council is both the fund and the administration authority, plus the owner of the risk strategy and all other relevant strategies. Cambridgeshire County Council is therefore accountable for the overall management of the fund via the oversight of the Cambridgeshire County Council Pension Committee and oversight from the board as an advisory role. There is no mention on paragraph 1 of the risk strategy that West Northants is the host authority as part of the shared service agreement, and hence, although the owner of the strategy is Cambridgeshire County Council, it's responsibility of West Northants for the day-to-day management of the fund and to ensure compliance with the strategy on behalf of Cambridgeshire County Council. The updating of the risk strategy and the day-to-day addition, amendment and deletion of risk, the subsequent grading of risk and controls and the associated narrative of risk register is conducted by fund officers employed by West Northants, but the pension committee is actually accountable for the contents and story of the risk register that West Northants produces. I'm very pleased to see from now on that the pension committee will be presented with the risk papers at each meeting going forward. Personally, I feel the risk strategy just needs to be amended to clarify the roles, responsibilities and accountabilities of Cambridgeshire County Council and West Northampton and define what belongs to which authority.
Yes, thank you, Val, and thank you for your email as well. So we will pick that up, and obviously we will go through and just define those relationships as well between the lead authority, us as an administrator, and obviously where the roles and responsibilities sit between Cambridgeshire and West Northants. It is a valid point, and we will go through and update those.
Okay, thank you very much, Michelle. That's really kind. I don't have any more comments.
Well, I hadn't expected that to be that quick. Thank you.
That's why I sent the email, so it was quick. I knew we had so much to get through.
Thank you, Val, and thank you for picking that particular item up. The board is being asked to review the risk strategy and note the new risk register format, which came into effect from the 1st of April, and we will see populated at our next meeting, I believe. I believe we've done that. Thank you very much. And can I now just give a 5-minute comfort break? So if everybody could be back at the very latest by 12:04. And we will then head on with the pension contribution policy review. And Ben, my apologies for the delay, but I think we could all do just with that brief break. So
totally understood.
Thank you very much. We'll be back by 4 minutes past 12. Right.
Dennis, I can't seem to start my video because
Um,
it's been stopped by the host. I'll try again.
Sophie was going around sorting that out.
Okay, I'm done. I'm all right. Thank you.
We're just missing Councillor Seif at this moment. Right, he's back.
Yeah,
Excellent.
this video has not been opened up.
No, well, you're back now, so thank you very much. And I hope everybody's now set for the rest of the meeting. Ben, over to you, the employee and employer pension contribution policy.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So I'll just stick to the highlights really and treat the report as read. So there's been a review on this policy, which was last reviewed 12 months ago. It's mostly remained unchanged. The details of the minor changes are in section 3.1, which is hopefully 284 of your packs. Most of the changes, along with some of these other policies and strategies that we've been going through, are changes in relation to the latest General Code of Practice changes. So as we've got in that section 3.1, those legal requirements have been reflected and the examples of payment failure have been included within those. As well as that, and in line with the latest fund admin strategy, we've updated the admin fees and changes to the escalation log. So no major changes really to the policy we already had in for contributions. Just to add a bit of context, and I mean we've already covered it a bit when Madeleine did her update. We do get a high percentage of our contributions in. We are above 99%, and as said, if you look at those sort of 3-day issues where maybe a BACS has gone over the weekend, we're more like 100%. And more importantly, arguably, we're getting in the returns that show us the breakdown of that payment. Now, we need that in to be able to reconcile it correctly and show what they've paid us is what we're expecting. And those are around 100% as well. So I think, largely to give it context, I'd say we can see this policy is working. It's been well received by both internal and external audit. So yeah, to sum it up, really, no major changes, and it seems to be working quite well. The recommendation is just to note the changes to the policy, but with that, I'm happy to take any questions or comments.
Are there any questions or comments? Val.
Yeah. Yes, thank you, Dennis. There's just a small comment from me. It's really following on what I mentioned about the risk strategy document. I think on this one also, there needs to be a bit more clarity over 2 organisations and what people are actually responsible and accountable for. I'm not going to go in any more detail. I don't know whether Ben and Michelle could actually have a chat about this one, please, as well.
Yeah, no problem, Val. Thanks. And yeah, me and Michelle will maybe look through that as a collective response for all our papers. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Ben.
If there are no other questions, then the board has been asked to note the changes to the payment of employee and employer pension contributions policy. We've done that. Thank you very much. And thank you, Ben, for hanging around.
Pleasure. I've got another couple of papers yet.
Okay. Right. The next item is the General Code of Practice compliance. That one, I think, is with you, Madalena.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you. So this report follows the TPR expectations report that has been presented to the board in February 2025. We have now moved on to the final stage of the General Code of Practice review, looking at the best practice requirements. As you can see in the report, the fund is largely compliant. The table in section 3.2 details our compliance against the modules. As you can see, there is only one area of partial compliance that's detailed in section 3.4. Just for context, we looked at 26 best practice requirements in total. Just to confirm, in regards to the area of partial compliance, currently the business plan is periodically reviewed, and it has been tested as part of the war game exercise in 2023. However, just to align with the pensions regulators' requirements, officers will implement a regular review and testing cycle. This action has been added to the consolidated action plan that's in Appendix 3. So this action plan contains all actions identified as part of the General Code of Practice review, and the board will receive a progress report on this action plan later this year, I believe this autumn. Just to mention as well, moving forward, officers will complete an annual assessment to ensure that the fund remains fully compliant with the code. And lastly, just similar with the previous reports, Hymans has completed a review of our analysis just to ensure that we considered all relevant points. I think that's everything I wanted to highlight, so I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Madalena.
Thank you.
Are there any questions? Val, over to you.
It's just some little bits. It mentions in here about on page 301, about halfway down, it sort of says, "Oh, see Appendix 7 for details, Appendix 8, Appendix 9, Appendix 10. Where are these particular appendices? I'm not sure what I'm supposed to be looking at. You can point me in the right direction, Madalena.
Oh, sorry, what page is that?
It's on page 301. And it's about halfway down. It talks about the governing body, advisors and service providers, best practice.
Oh, right, yes. Those appendices are part of the tool that we've used that was issued by Hymans. We can send, I think, a summary around. We can circulate it after the meeting.
So sorry, so Val, in section 1.1 under background, it's got a link to the code of practice. So sorry, we should have made that clearer that those linked directly to the code of practice.
I couldn't seem to get the link to work.
Oh, okay. We'll recirculate that.
Thank you very much. That's the end of my questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. If there are no other questions, then we've been asked to note that, and it's great to see that we are continuing to be to fully meet the code with one or two minor exceptions. So that is absolutely great. Well done all. The next item is the annual report and statement of account. I'd like to welcome Azim Iqbal from KPMG, who I believe is with us. And Ben, can you introduce the report, please?
Yeah, sure. I can see Asim is with us, so that's great news. Makes my job a lot easier for this particular item. I'll just give you a bit of a heads up of where we are with it at the moment. So and we're talking about the 23-24 accounts now. So the annual report has been signed off with the November investment subcommittee. The statement of account has been signed off by the audit committee in January. So what you're seeing now is the final draft of the annual report, and there's attachment to the annual report and the statement of accounts. There's no major changes to that from the draft that you have previously seen. What you will be seeing for the first time is the audit findings report, and that's what Asim is here to present. Just a bit of a summary of how the officers have felt the audit has gone. We're very happy with comments by the auditor and how the audit went. It's a clean audit. It's clear of any material or non-material misstatement, and there's no unadjusted items. So from our point of view, it's a good news story. I'm sure you want to hear it from the horse's mouth rather than myself. So happy to pass over to Asim.
Thank you, Ben, and thank you, Chair. So just a quick introduction for myself. I'm Asim, one of the senior managers in KPMG, and I support Sarah, who is the partner for the Cambridgeshire Pension Fund. Obviously, as Ben said, it's the first year KPMG were appointed as the auditors of the Cambridgeshire Pension Fund through PSSA contract. So, but in terms of relationship with Ben and the team, I worked with the team back in 2015, 16, 17. So we had that kind of a working relationship. So that really helped in terms of making sure the transition process as part of the first year really kind of happened quickly. So before I go into the detail of our report, I'll again pass my thank you to Ben and the team for being very supportive and cooperative throughout the audit process. I know the first year is always kind of like challenging, and again with all the backlog in the local government space, because I know for a number of years it's kind of we are behind the cycle. So I'm glad that we have the 23-24 accounts assigned, and we already started working with Ben, Mio, and the team for 24-25, and we are basically aiming to get back into the normal cycle where hopefully by September, we'll be in a position to then issue a findings report for 24-25 cycle. But in terms of 23-24 accounts, obviously, as Ben said, we have shared this report with the audit committee and with the pensions committee, and now it's kind of like we are sharing with the pension board. I'll take a report as read, but I will briefly go through in terms of the on page 4, you can able to see where we had any significant risks, or if there's any accounting estimates that we had as part of the audit. In terms of obviously the 2 significant risks that we had, one is the management override of controls that's being driven by auditing standards, and the second significant risk that we had was on the Cambridge and Counties Bank, and obviously that's because of the subjective area in terms of the valuation involved as part of that. As part of that, we engaged our corporate finance team. They looked into the underlying models and the reports provided by the management experts or the specialists. And we are happy with the final valuation that's included as part of the financial statements. Then in terms of the other accounting estimates, you can see the level 3 pooled investment vehicles and all the other valuation relating to the level 1 and level 2 funds. We had that as part of other estimates. We obviously work closely with the management, but we also get directly the third-party confirmations from all the underlying fund managers. And in terms, especially around the level 3, obviously they take a bit of time in terms of getting the final valuation done. So by the time when management have to draft their financial statements by end of May, they might not have some final valuation. They may be using some of the estimates, whereas when we do the auditing, we get the final valuations for those funds. So as a result of that, you can see there was an adjustment. But again, management already kind of picked that up as part of their due diligence process post year, and when they received the fund statements, and we received similar fund statements, so we worked with the management, and then they updated their financial statements for those level 3 adjustments made post year. And I'll take a pause there, just if anyone have any questions before I can then run through the rest of the report.
Councillor Seif.
It's gone through the Audit and Accounts Committee, but I don't remember if we saw the detailed audit findings. I'm hoping my colleagues did. But I note with some alarm, and bearing in mind this is not a confidential part of the meeting, and certainly in the officer's report, I think it's page 312, point 318, you draw attention to deficiency of controls in connection with transactions with related parties. And that's not something I've seen before. What is the nature of these transactions? And have they been resolved? Have the control deficiencies been resolved? Are there specific transactions that you were concerned about yourselves as auditors? And should we know about them?
Ben, we can't hear you if you're saying something, sorry.
Oh no, here we go again. Can anybody hear me?
We can hear you, Councillor Jeffrey, but I think we can't hear Ben now.
Shall I repeat the question?
No, I understood your question. I think Ben is trying to respond back to your question.
Oh, right. No, it's Ben that you can't hear. Right.
Okay. Yeah. No, so again, I'm happy to kind of take that. Again, I think there are no concerns around that. That was basically a process improvement point that we have raised with the management, because again, that is as part of the work that we are doing. What we are doing is like, if there's any best practice that we are kind of noting anywhere else, we then share with the management as part of. So there's no concerns from the existing work that we have done. It was just that something management can implement further going forward. But my understanding is that's already being done, Ben, as part, because I think when we had a discussion, it was kind of like we'll put that in place, and then hopefully for FY 24-25, we'll drop that recommendation or the process improvement point.
To the best of your knowledge, there are no transactions with related parties.
Yeah.
Who are those related parties, for example?
Yeah. And again, I think it's the wide definition of related parties. When we say related parties, it's obviously the county council comes as one of that, and all the admitted bodies are the scheduled bodies and all those kind of. So it's that wide definition. But in terms of when you say related party, in terms of like any management personnel or those, no, we haven't noted anything alarming or concerning there.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. I will, if there's no other questions, I will read through some of the obviously on page 5 of our report, we have listed down the other audit risks, and that includes in terms of the contributions into the pension fund by all the other employees. So we have done our procedures around. There's no concerns around the process or all the contribution received by the pension fund from the other employees. And then the other process that we look into is the actuarial process where pension funds submit all the information to the actuary for the valuation purposes. Again, there's no concerns raised around that. Then in terms of KPMG, obviously I'll take you to the appendix. A couple of things that I would draw your attention. One is obviously the independence of KPMG. As I said, we are being appointed by PSSA, and then we are not providing any other services to Cambridgeshire Pension Fund other than just the external audit. So there's no conflict of interest or anything in terms of us being the auditors. Similarly, personally, from all the team members working on the pension fund, there was no conflict of interest or any independence issues. And then lastly, in terms of the fees being obviously agreed by PSSA, The only additional fee I would kind of say is a significant in there is the letters or the assurance letter that we write to the other employees auditors. Obviously, there are a number of admitted and scheduled bodies as part of the pension fund. And to help facilitate the whole process, the pension fund auditor kind of do some agreed upon procedures for those employees auditors. So we have raised the additional fee for that. There's a very kind of a strict protocol around that. We raised the fee for that. It's being submitted to PSSA. PSSA then engaged with the management to get their view on the fee. Management then basically agreed that fee with them. But then again, I think as part of the whole process, that fee is being charged back to the employer. So then, because that's being specifically requested by their auditors, so the pension fund is not bearing any cost with regards to that. It's kind of being passed back to the employees. So, but that's pretty much for now. I'm happy to take any further questions if there are any.
Ben, good to see you're back.
Yeah, can you hear me now? Okay.
Yes.
Good stuff. Thank you, Asim, for taking possibly questions that were for me. I dropped out just after Councillor Steve's question. So is that one covered? Do you want me to come in on that one at all?
Again, I tried explaining from our perspective, but I'm happy if you want to add anything on that related parties.
I think I heard that it was covered.
Okay.
Fine. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry?
Sorry, I said, oh, gosh, bloody thing.
You're mute. Councillor Seif, you are muted.
All I'm saying is, I'm sorry, I'm happy with the response that KPMG has given us. Thank you.
Fine. Then thank you all. We've been asked to note the contents of the report and the audit report. So thank you, Asim, and thank you, Ben. The next item is the pension dashboards update. I believe that one's with you, Mark.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And I will be brief on this one. This is, as a reminder, an assurance report that we bring to, to give you assurance of the progress we're making on the dashboard project. It's going well of all our projects. It's the one where it's going and has continued to go to certainly since the reassessment of the timescale centrally to plan. The latest is that we did indeed connect to the console, which is effectively our interaction with the dashboard ecosystem. We looked at our matching criteria on there. We looked at how queries would come through. That testing went to plan and to schedule. So the next phase will be the live connection, which will happen in the summer. So the live connection to the dashboard. So we've now slotted ourselves in with Hayward, our software supplier, for that. We were originally going to bring some matching criteria to the March cycle of sort of committees and boards, or the boards earlier in the year for yourselves. We did delay that to wait to go through that user access testing to see how it worked. And so therefore you are seeing the draft matching policy for the first time, which is attached as an appendix. That matching policy should be stated. We're now obviously will connect by our deadline of the end of October, but the dashboards won't go live to the general public in all likelihood until a year later, the dashboard available point. Between when we connect and when we go live, we are expecting exchange of data as part of testing. And so we will really start to test that more with data, and that may lead us to evolve our matching policy. So it is draft, it can change at any point, but we will bring it back for approval if we look to make changes. And just as a reminder, what we're trying to do is to match perfectly as many times as we can, but be very careful that we're not sending data back only to the correct recipient of that data. But equally, at the other end of the spectrum, we're trying to avoid absolutely loads of partial matches, which will require manual intervention. So it's trying to get as much to be done automatically as possible, but being very careful about the data. And I think the final thing I was going to say was probably around yes, we've got data quality work ongoing. You've seen a lot of that in all the other projects we're doing. This all kind of relates together to improve our data, but AVCs are the area where we have the most, I think, concerns and uncertainty. Both of our suppliers are going to send or intending to send data to us. So we will then hold AVC data on our system and send it to the dashboard, which means we're in control. So that's really, really positive. But in order to do so, there is some development work for Hayward to actually create a data view to hold that. So to be clear, at the moment, there is no data view on the system, but they have shared the timelines and the cost of that development. So we believe that that is in train and should be ready in plenty of time. But there is some uncertainty at the moment. So I think with that, I will pause and see if there's any questions, Chair.
Thank you, Mark. I have just one question, if I may. On 8.3.1, partial match, you are specifying 2 other additional data items, as well as the date of birth and the surname. And one of those is last name. That doesn't, I would naturally think that surname and last name are the same thing. So I'm just wondering whether that should be first name rather than last name.
It is last name. I think he's trying to cope with a situation where we might hold a different surname. So they will provide I suppose, their former surname for us in certain cases, so it is definitely one of those partial matching criteria.
Okay, it just didn't strike me as clearly why, if you already got the surname, last name was an appropriate thing. Perhaps it just needs a little expansion as to why it might be different from the surname.
Yeah. Okay.
Val?
Mark, just to, reiterate an early comment about roles and responsibilities between Cambridgeshire and West Northampton, please, on the policy.
No, I think it's a fair comment. And I think the way we'll probably do it is to have a sort of statement at the top of each of our policies around us being a lead authority for this is obviously for Cambridgeshire policies, and then point out what party people are with later, when it comes to like spelling out, the officers, for example, will be specify who they're with. So that will then, I think, and we'll do that for all of our policies. So yeah, absolutely, Val.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? So we're noting the contents of the report, including those draft matching criteria policies, which is Appendix 1. Thank you. And thank you, Mark. Next item is the agenda plan. And that will now be more fully populated, I believe, Michelle, given the forward plan for the year has been agreed.
Yeah, absolutely. So for the next meeting, now that the business plan's been approved, we'll obviously populate that with all the activities that have been agreed, and obviously any policy or strategy updates. Just also to confirm that at the next meeting, we're also planning on bringing a valuation update to you as well of all the activity that's gone on in regards of the valuation up to date. And as Mark mentioned earlier, we're obviously having a look at the moment about streamlining some of those reports. So you'll see that coming through next time as well.
Great, thank you. Val?
Yeah, can I just ask one really quick question? I understand post scrutiny means that it's been to the committee before it comes to us. Does that mean in that case, our role is just to note it? I'm just a little bit confused.
Yeah, so how I've been thinking about this in more recent times is, yes, in theory, it's to note, but if there are any, say, minor changes that the board notice afterwards, because we've got a mechanism in place now where we provide all policy and strategy updates in the governance and compliance report, effectively, what I've done on a couple of them is actually gone back to the committee and put in that table that these further additions have been made. If there were significant changes that the board felt after it had been approved, we'd obviously have to have a conversation about whether we take it to the committee or whether we wait for the next year review cycle to update those. But I think it's working a little bit better in that respect. And actually, if you do notice anything, I have got another way of getting it back on the committee's radar without having to give them the full policy again.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much.
That's great. Thank you, Michelle, for clarifying. We'll take that agenda plan as noted. We will now move to items for which it's necessary to exclude the press and public. So this is a question to members. Do members agree to resolve that the press and public be excluded from the meeting on the grounds that the agenda contains exempt information under paragraph 3 of part 1 of schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972 as amended, and that it would not be in the public interest for this information to be disclosed, information relating to the financial or business affairs of any particular person, including the authority holding that information. Do I get is that a yes from members? As this is the final public item on the agenda, I would like to express my thanks to those members of the public and press who have taken the time to watch the meeting today via the Council's website.